Bon dia a tots, gràcies per venir. Good morning, everybody. Today we have this special seminar, and it's my pleasure to introduce Dorcas Muthoni. I would say that today is not the ceremony. The ceremony is tomorrow, so I expect all of you tomorrow here. But today Dorcas will talk about her experience in the open world and the ACFIX as part of his professional work, and I think that it will be very interesting to share with us some of the thoughts about the computer science, the professional life, about Africa, and about so many things. I think this is a special seminar. It's in a slightly different format, so I think that I expect a lot of questions at the end or during, I don't know. Dorcas will manage the talk as she wants. And just remind you that after the seminar, we'll have the Christmas celebration in the Aula Aranyó, in the Sala Aranyó with the snacks and the lunch. So Dorcas, the floor is yours.
Thank you very much, Michael. It's a great pleasure to be here. It's my first time in Spain, and I'm really happy to be at the university. I feel very closely to the education sector. I am honored to get the opportunity to share the work that I've been doing for the last 14 years, which in the form of two organizations that I have founded. One is Openworld Limited, which is my software company, and AFCIX, which is a network for women in tech across Africa. So thank you very much. I was given 45 minutes, and I'll just go in and share a little. So just a little bit about me. I'm a middle child, so I think for the psychologists, you say there are a few psychologists in the room, know a few stories about middle children, and I shared that. And I am married to Joseph, who is here with me, and we have two gorgeous daughters. I studied computer science at the University of Nairobi and graduated in 2002. I started my business when I was 24 years, a little just 2 years after that. I'll tell you how and why. And at the same time, I started a Tech Women Network at 24 years. Again, I'll tell you a little bit about that. And what I enjoy most is really giving back and nature. As you know, Kenya is a very beautiful place. You need to visit to see for yourself. I think I was with a colleague who's visited, and it's a very beautiful place, and it's one of the places that really nurtures my spirit. So this is just an example of what that means. This is a leopard with its catch in the Kenyan wild, and you want to say this physically, we have a lot of ways to get you there. So some of the things that I have been doing or recognized for is I'm in the World Economic Forum Global Future Council for Technology, Values and Policy, and that was since last year. I'm an Internet Hall of Fame inductee since 2014, and a few other things, including in our local scene, where I was recognized as top 40 under 40 in Kenya, and different organizations have kind of reached out to me and us as a community, including my team, just to recognize some of the work that we are doing. So let me begin by discussing AFCIX, which is the mentorship and capacity building initiative for women that I started in 2004. So my first job post-university was a project where we were connecting universities to the internet. When I was at the University of Nairobi, our university was the only university that had gotten an internet connection, because internet connections began around 1997. This was very late in the game. So the university is the largest university, and that was the only university with an internet connection. So there was a huge a project to get internet connectivity to all the universities, public and private. So I found it to be an interesting project because I could just imagine what the universities were missing at that stage. So, and as I was doing this job, I created a small lab to allow university students in the organization to start off internship programs, because we used a lot of, we did a lot of experiments to see what we could help the universities with. But for 2 years that I worked there, I didn't get a single female interested in an internship opportunity. At that point, I had not checked to see that we were very few in my own faculty for the 4 years I was at the university. I didn't register that very strongly until I realized that nobody was walking in to look for that. And there's this girl from a different country who was in a private university who came, and I just decided to take her, even if she didn't find an alignment. I just said, the minute she walked in and said I was looking at internship, I knew that I was going to have her in the lab to do the experiments that we were doing. So we had our celebration around our Software Freedom Day. It's a day that was used to promote free software and open source software. And with that girl, I just said we have to go to high schools or get high schools to know about computer science. And so we used that. That was the launching pad of the AFCHICS network. So because we wanted to get more people to make the decisions to take up computer science or information technology, all these programs, because that's the only way we're going to increase the number of girls that walked in to the organization. So what we've done since 2004 is organize computing career workshops with a special emphasis of encouraging the uptake of computing careers amongst high school girls. So we would get them into a room like this, and then we would just talk and tell them what we do on a regular basis, so that this allows the girls to know what we do and what our career in this means. And then many times you get these girls in, and once they are in tech, somehow they leave, or they take very soft jobs, and we don't have them anymore. So we figure that it's important to introduce continuous career development opportunities, so that even if it's short courses that you can just join, you can help yourself align better and position yourself better. So that's another thing that we do. And the last and most important is role modeling of upcoming women in computer science. Now, I was giving this example earlier. When you're growing up, you probably have seen a doctor, because right from when you're a small baby, you've been seeing a pediatrician, right? So, but for engineering, unless you have one in your family or one in your close, I love that they're laughing, one in your family, or one in your neighborhood, or one in your family friend or gathering, or somebody coming to speak in school, you don't get to interact with them, and you don't even know what it feels. It's really foreign for many girls. And sometimes, along the school system, somebody says math is hard, or girls always don't perform well in maths, and science, average score of girls is always there, and it's seen as normal. So this is not very encouraging. So role modeling, just seeing another woman who is doing that, just makes somebody see that it's possible, And this is the main activities that we've been carrying out. So this is how we do it. So this is a school in Uganda. We have several chapters which are all driven by volunteers, people who just feel what I just shared and want to spend time doing this. So this is a school in Uganda. This is very rural Africa. These girls probably don't have the benefit of having a teacher who can tell them more about computer science, about engineering. There's probably no computer lab in the school, and they probably don't have access to even the high school close by, even if there was a lab there. They're probably coming from homes that don't have anything like a computer or a laptop or a tablet. I think there's probably the biggest interaction with technology is FM radio, or now mobile phones, some of them which are just feature phones. Do you get it? But they're supposed to to live in the modern world in 2030, right? So how will they fit? So we can only help them imagine, and this can only be by us presenting ourselves in those environments, saying what we do, and sharing this information. It just helps them to imagine, but it doesn't quite deliver this infrastructure there. But I know it generates demand for this infrastructure, because some of them will go home and tell their parents that I would appreciate it if I got a tablet or a computer, or I met this lady and this is what she does, and I would like to find out where I could do that. Others will be inspired and say, I can't change my immediate circumstances, but I'm going to work hard because I want to be like that girl. So this is what we do. And this is by going, we allow our chapters to do the activities relevantly in what they feel would be most impactful to their societies. So this is the choice of AFCHICS Uganda. They chose to go to the schools and visit them. And I see many others doing this. We also do this in Kenya. So this is just one of the different activities that we do to encourage the uptake of computer science amongst girls. Now, this is another format. This is a Kenyan setup, a bit different. So what we do in Kenya is many times the most official ways to engage school is to put actually snail mail, you know? We just do a letter on a letterhead and post it in the post office and have it delivered to the school. And the schools will just see this invitation to this career workshop. We host them at the universities, because when the kids come to the universities, it also does a bit of magic. So this is one that we held last year. We do it once a year, try to make them annual. There's big demand, but being volunteers, we are doing what we can at this point. And the purpose of this is just to bring again the girls from different schools to a forum and bring role models doing different things, you know, working in telcos, working in robotics, working in whatever, social media, and just who share their story. This is what I do on a daily basis. And when they come to these forums, they come with their teachers. So I must tell you that the teachers went to college when there was no tech. So they have no idea about these careers. So this is a big challenge for the school system, because the teacher doesn't know, the parent doesn't know, and then the kid doesn't know. It's just hearing, all right? So we use this opportunity, share some materials, and we work in partnership with different organizations. One of the things we do this to is we've partnered with the University of Oregon, where they get us books from O'Reilly, and we donate books to school libraries. So most of the schools that come always go back with, you know, books on various subjects. Probably university level books, but we don't really mind, because I remember I loved going to the library when I was in high school and seeing this complex chemistry book, because it challenged me. And this is what we want to awaken in these girls, the ones who are already self-driven enough. The teachers have found it extremely beneficial, because students have the habit of asking so many questions to the teacher. And so they kind of get a little bit more informed about career choices. The other thing is the girls get to see role models. And they feel, wow, okay, I want to be this. They also get to see an institution that's delivering this program. So they already have an idea of what it is, because we also give them tours of the school, of the universities. And this has made a big difference, because in many forums like this, we have a student who was in the audience a few years ago, who shows up and says, I want to usher, and then says, I was in this program and that's why I'm in the university, even if we didn't know that the student was there. So this is some of the things that we've done, and that this has made a tremendous difference to the schools. We've gotten teachers who became very good champions of girls coming into tech, because they're able to mold them and they have this motivation, and they're able to kind of associate what they're talking with the forum. Now, this is continuous career development. One of the things that I mentioned earlier is that, to be successful in this career, it's hands-on skills. So if you don't have hands-on skills, then you won't be successful, then you won't get responsibilities. And one of the things that we figured is that the school systems or even the universities are very academic. So a lot of people don't live with hands-on skills. So they get jobs, and then the women just feel a little bit less confident to delve in. And so they start, kind of little by little shying away and getting away from this. So we wanted to create spaces where women can come into labs and do different things. So I think this is like a Unix administration workshop for system administrators who service server farms that are heavy on Unix. You'll notice that we have lots of instructors, and there's men. Let me see if I can. Which one was the pointer? Okay, that's this. There's a men, because we don't live in an ideal environment. There's nothing like a course for women by women only. That's not the true world, right? So we have to really make the world real. And out of this program, many women tend to go and really have a lot more confidence and experiment more. But what is most interesting is that most of them acquire the confidence to steer projects and ask for challenges. And what we have also found is that the men have also really helped us in bringing in more women into these programs, because they already know colleagues who are women only in a department who would benefit from this, and they want to get them onto projects in a more significant way. So men and women are really good agents for helping in this, continuous development, because most of the colleagues are going to be male. You're probably going to be admiring this guy who gets everything done or fixes, or, and this just is part of life. So we've done this with many organizations. And for coming into the program, because it's always free, is after this program, are you willing to run just a small kind of session to other women who you know? And the response from the women has always been yes. And then the other challenge is that anybody willing to host a similar workshop in their country would tell us. So most of these workshops have been very successful, because we have all these ladies waiting in the pipeline saying, I want to host this, which creates a lot of opportunities, because you have to go to an institution, convince them to provide a lab, which we are going to use for the experiments, or the training workshops, and get all these other sponsors. So it helps them in the collaboration and a lot of challenges of getting things together and getting to know how to get support within your institution. So the other thing that we do is that we've been doing some travel grants to get these women to get global exposure. I don't know if you're familiar with the Grace Hopper Conference. It's a huge celebration of women in computing in the US. We've gone to this forum for a long time. I was a change agent in 2008. I was given a change agent award by Anita Bock Institute. And when I discovered this forum, I tried to get travel grants to women from Africa to go there. And this is because that global exposure really makes a big difference. And so we've managed to visit several years, and now we encourage, I think a few of women from Africa have even presented papers in this forum. And it has made a big, big difference to the careers of these women. Some of them, I think I would say particularly, she now works for McKinsey, and we just got her out from a systems administrator job, an assistant systems administrator job in a small IT company in Malawi. And when we gave her this exposure, she just turned into something else. She rediscovered who she was, her capabilities, and faced the world in a totally different way than expected. She's one of our best case studies for this. We also started a NAFCHICS Tech Women Summit after this experience, because a lot of women cannot be able to go to the US, so we want to create a local experience whereby it's easy for people to come from other African countries or close by and just tell them more about similar opportunities, do the role modeling of probably very senior women on this. I think I mentioned to you that when I said this is a forum, because these are the women who just joined the work system, they've gotten technical skills, but they're still at the not very interesting levels, but they have every capability to do that. We just need them to realize that they are capable. So what we do is I just create a very nice networking environment and motivational environment that's very similar to Grace Hopper, and we work with the Anita Borg Institute on this one as well. So like-minded partnerships is what I just want to again highlight. We can do everything, and we say this is not an ideal world where we can create a special space for women. It's not an island. So we have had very good collaborations with the Internet Society. This is just Kathy Brown, the CEO of the Internet Society, who are really trying to see what the internet can be for everyone all over the world. We ride on the internet a lot in our voluntary activities, allowing people just to feel free to do whatever they want, and just sharing this information online. And through these like-minded partnerships at local level and international level, we've been able to make a difference because, for example, if there's a program running in this university that people from our network can join, we don't have to create it. We just have to make sure that we are, sharing this information, and people are growing. And then the next thing we see is really successful case studies of what these women are capable of. So this has been our main pillar, like-minded partnerships with the organizations in the industry. I haven't done it alone. These are my volunteers. So we now have an AFCHICS board, although for a long time we ran just as an amorphous online community that didn't have any governance structure for all those activities. But we just introduced a formal entity incorporated in Kenya just to allow this to turn into an organization that can be self-sustaining. We are heavily inspired by Rotary International as an organization and how that works, and we hope to really learn from it to see how people could create such a structure for it. So I have Nodumo here from Zimbabwe, that's myself. This is Irene from Kenya. This is from Uganda, Lillian, and this is Kodia from Senegal, and this is Hauda from Morocco. So we are thinking of how to create this. These are all volunteers who've hosted events and done activities on voluntary basis and can help us really scale the organization to a global level. So this is really the summary of what AFCHICS is. It inspires me a lot, gives me a lot of energy, because when you meet somebody who just benefited from something that you took for granted, like information on how to join a university, how to join this program, what you can be, what I do on a regular basis, which I would assume everybody might know, or might be obvious to somebody who definitely had no clue what it is, then you see a transformed life that really makes you see the purpose of really giving out some information we take for granted, and just being part of that world that pays it forward. So let me take a gulp of water. So just to, again, close on this, I just want to raise a few questions that are worth experimenting on. So do you think tech is gender neutral? I don't know. Which really we are trying to think about, is gender a factor in developing, just coming up with the technologies, controlling it, accessing it, and utilizing it, This is a question that came to my mind actually 10 years ago. Somebody said, come and make a presentation about what you're trying to create with AFCHICS. And then I found that these questions are still very relevant today in our society as I was preparing to come here. And in Africa in particular, where I come from, gender is a major factor in determining who develops, deploys, and has access to and benefits from new technologies. And what I was just sharing is just several examples of, that brings into perspective that this is mainly because of, poverty, purchasing power, and all these other factors around women and socio-cultural settings that have been part of our world for a long time, that today still determine a lot of things and how people benefit. Now, other factors, of course, are literacy and education, language, time, cost, location, content. But for what we speak about women in STEM is later in life is technical skills and really having, being able to steer projects is really critical. And I do think that this is still a major factor around the world and is still impeding the growth of women in STEM. And anybody wanting to do that would probably be thinking about some interventions. So some of the interventions that we always kind of, encourage any organization or, anybody who is interested in this to consider is gender issues. Consider gender issues at an early stage. I think there was a program that you shared. The reason we go to high schools is because we want to, this is a funnel, right? So we're going, the more women we get into STEM, the more likely we'll have at the end of the process, at the end of the pipeline, at the end of the process over time. And so we believe that we should really just have as many women getting into tech as possible because we wouldn't have all of them remaining there in the long term. So, and then we need to have a precaution against unintended negative effects on women, especially at very young age. Because sometimes when people say, don't do that because you're a girl, sometimes it's a good thing to say, but it has a lot of unintended negative effects on girls. I don't want to give examples, but everybody can imagine things that, including choices of the toys, the things that the girl does from morning to evening. In the African context, there's all these things. Many of them are good, but some of them have really many unintended negative effects. Everybody can just examine based on their setting. And gender technology values and policies. Sometimes, unless you proactively, get policy to do something about gender, things don't change, or nobody gets to pay attention to it. So whatever is relevant to any society, that can be done. And many times we are able to voice these concerns. I think in Kenya, one of the things that's in the constitution is 30% women across. It's really a quota, but it kind of helps people know that there's still room for me if I push it in. If I push in, there's room for me because it's guaranteed by law. The other thing is that tech needs to be introduced, or women need to be involved in tech at all levels, school, decision-making, development, utilization, because these quotas don't make a difference, and sometimes women don't even take up the quotas, or the wrong women take up the quotas, the people who are not supposed to benefit. This is really some of the reasons why quota systems actually fail. So whatever it is that can be done, this is a huge challenge for the world over many, many years, and there's no quick fix for it. I think the most important thing is just keep on talking about it and seeing how we can get interventions around it. But I think the most sustainable way of making a difference in this is just women just have to go for it. It's not ever going to come to you. Just go for it. And we always, whenever we do our programs, we find those women who are going for it. And those are the ones we support. And I can assure you, there's always a lot of people ready to support. And then the other thing that I think is a strength for women is because it's already, the sector is already, tech is already heavily male, the best change agents are male. They're male and they're men. And this is right from home. If you have, a daughter, a niece who is curious, or who you can just tell what you do on a regular basis, or the colleagues that you work with, give them challenging projects. Like, please give women challenging projects and let them not run away from them. You'll be surprised that they'll turn around very well. So instead of saying, let us give her the softer project, give her the more complex project. And, just support, and that's it. And this makes a big difference. So those are some of the things that we have done with our male colleagues who we've worked with, and it has worked very well, and it has been very sustainable because we don't have to talk about it, we just create an environment. And this is all in the aim of getting diversity, because we believe that gender is a very critical aspect when it comes to diversity, and it's one of the things that would really make a big difference. Right now around the world, everybody's talking about SDGs, right? What I think, and this is my opinion, is that if gender diversity was achieved, 30 decades ago, this world would be very different. A lot of this is trying to work for would have come to the table a long time ago, because women do care about other people a lot first. They always consider the other person. This is really a natural thing about women, starting from, all these natural things about women and children. So a lot of things like this that people are discussing today, how do we do it? When did we go? It's because we chased shareholder value and profits so aggressively, which is okay, but forgot a lot of the parts about the communities. But I believe if we had enough representation of women at the right levels, a lot of things, including what is going on in our environment, would not have occurred. So I still think that economic and social progress have, women are going to play a very big role in making sure that this success occurs, and that is just allowing us to be there, but most importantly for women just getting there and being able to contribute a different perspective to the things that people should care about. So I'll go ahead and speak about what I do on my day-to-day basis, because OFCHICS is purely a voluntary activity that I put in time for whenever I could, but still is able to run on its own. So what I seek to do is, I want to see technology positively transforming the lives of the African society. As I grew up, we listened to the BBC radio a lot. And there was this program called Focus on Africa. It still runs even today. Focus on Africa has spent a lot of time talking about, unfortunately, the negative parts of Africa. And I really felt like, that's not the life I live, because it's talking about Angola. There was a big war in Angola as I was growing up, and I had no idea where Angola was. I knew it was an African country, but it made me feel so, negative. So I have always, aimed to do work that is going to impact my continent positively, and if possible, give it positive publicity. And that's what we do at Openworld. Now, Openworld has given birth to a few other spin-offs, and I'll just discuss this a bit. I'll discuss this from the perspective of what we are doing and some of the challenges that we believe are quite huge, but we want to be part of the equation while solving those problems. So let me just say how Openworld began. When I got the first job that I mentioned, which I was working at the Kenya Education Network, setting up internet connectivity for universities, we didn't have a software license budget, right? And this was 2002, because the year, like a month or so before I graduated, before I finished my project, I was already given this job. So what we were required to do is just really check out which open source software solutions would fit different situations for the universities. So I spent a lot of time evaluating this variety of free software and open source software, and just seeing what the university can do, and then building capacity internally for us to be able to use that, because we had to deploy a server farm and provide some services, and then as well as treat universities or the technical teams in the universities to provide, things as basic as email, because we were giving them the internet. Now they needed to begin to use different services for that. So as I was doing this job, I got an opportunity to make a presentation, because I got very passionate about open source software, and that's because I just studied computer science. There is no internet, there are no computers, software is unaffordable. So I was never going to get a job or get things going. So we have to create an environment where we can thrive, right? So that was really what was interesting to me about open source at this stage. So I was given an opportunity during the World's Telecommunications Day, which is an ITU day, where people were discussing many things about the telecom sector, to talk about open source. And during that day, I was just 24. I think I was still 23 actually, years old, and I got this standing ovation of just talking about what software options existed, because of how hard it was for all those people in top management to deal with the whole thing of bringing in technology into the enterprise and being able to afford. Because people just didn't know that open source existed. So out of the age, the topic, and the dire need, and the foresight that they could see, and I was this young girl who was just coming from the university, and when the minister of this, the minister is there, everybody was amazed at what I was talking about. And then immediately I realized this means that there's a market to be served. So I wasn't wrong to choose computer science. It just means that I just had to use a different approach in this market. So that's how my company began. And the first thing that we faced was very serious resistance. Anybody who will tell you that open source was heavily resisted during those days. And that's because people are always afraid of what they don't know. It's normal. What you are not familiar with, the first thing you do, like, what the hell is it? So because of that, I decided to monetize that problem. So that was the first business model, building capacity. So what we did is I quickly set up a training division to ensure that people had hands-on technical skills. So we just set up a lab in the office. Actually, I began by collaborating with the university to give me a lab, and then I would just bring in people from the private sector, give them training. And because technical people like new things, people went on to experiment a lot more, and that just started to generate lots of demand, both for the training, because people speak about, have you heard about Linux? Have you tried it out? Did you know you can do all these things? It can give you unlimited licenses. You don't really have to struggle with all those things that you're struggling with, especially for, mail services, domain services and all these things. And in the process, we became this hub that people know, where if you want to know anything about open source software, then this is the company to call. So that's what we did, and that also gave birth to our open source consulting business, which is just software customizations that people want, in case people wanted, and software development. So that was how my company started. And this was all because we want to see sustainable software acquisition amongst our enterprises, amongst our governments, because that's the only way tech will become part of our day-to-day lives and our day-to-day organizations. So there's still a huge problem with use of pirated software, and that's because people cannot afford. They want the software, but they can't afford. So they'll get a laptop, has no operating system, they'll load the operating system that's available from a friend, they'll load whatever it is that they need. But open source means that you don't have to do that. You don't have to take anybody's software illegally. You can just take whatever alternative exists and learn. And this has made a huge difference. So out of that, we also got a lot of demand from the government, and we started to do government projects. So personally, I had a lot of frustrations trying to get government services, being a business person. And I started to think of, can we stop going to the government for these services? And I spent a lot of time in forums trying to engage government. Out of that, we definitely got a lot of projects from the government institutions. But of course, government had its own challenges. Biggest challenge is resistance to automation. There was a huge challenge from the government. I think it still is a huge challenge. There are a lot of government services that you can just get going on electronic systems just because maybe people are very slow, or there's a lot of integration needs and there's a lack of cooperation between government agencies. This is a common problem in our environment. Now, and then government has extremely slow processes, and you want to get into a project, deploy, and move to another one, and government can take you sometimes even years. Public procurement is dogged with graft in my setup, and this is a big problem because I do not want to be involved in that. And then just basically lack of champions, because if you don't have a president who says everything needs to be automated, then you have a problem. Otherwise, you're pushing something that is not seen as a priority. But I must say that, there's been a huge difference. And almost all these tools in the available for e-government in Kenya today are using open source. Actually, we've been in the team that our World Bank put up a team of vendors, and we've been in this team because automation in government is, they prioritize open source because they don't want to get involved in licenses. They don't want, there's so much freedom, and there's been so much growth on their side of programming and open source languages, and it's much more friendly. These are the skill set that is locally available, really. And so we are very happy to see this, despite having been very frustrated many years ago with a lot more vendors coming in. So what has been the impact of our work on open source software? Because of the work that we did and several other companies that came up in the same space, we got a lot of tenders, and even today it's common to see a tender that says strictly we want open source solutions, or somebody's going to use open source to deploy the solution that we are looking for. We also got calls from the African Union and have already done a system for the African Union. We also got contracted to develop the government of Kenya's performance management system. The same, we've done a study for the government of Rwanda on how they can benefit from open source software. Our company has been awarded, and today web development is heavily PHP. MySQL is still the most popular database management system. This is what you'll find all the university, most of the students in the universities who are doing web development will probably just be doing this, and that's because even around the world, it's heavily supported, and we also distributed lots of Linux disks to schools, people who came to our trainings. That's what we spend. I mean, I don't know if you remember the Ubuntu Foundation used to distribute. You just write them an email and say, I want 1,000 disks, and they'll just mail them to you. And your job was just to make sure that as many people had. So these are some of the things that we did very well, and out of that, we trained thousands of system administrators who really determined what was happening in the server side, because we've basically been on the server side. And then we got a lot of technical teams recommending open source solutions, and therefore this generated a lot of demand for consulting services. So this is how I tackled the problem of, I just completed a computer science degree. The software industry is barely anywhere. Institutions can afford software licenses, and I want to be in the industry as a consultant. So that's how we grew the company. And now I just want to focus on, the transition that has occurred since then. So along the way, there was there's always this debate of, is open source sustainable? I mean, how will people make money out of this? Obviously, there was a huge question on that space, which we were all struggling with. And as you know, when such free things become popular, then the demand for those kinds of services that we provided earlier would definitely go down because there's competition. People are doing it by themselves. So open source always had a weak business model. It was very hard to show how this would go on over time. So around the time is when the whole cloud talk came up, and we were paying good attention to it. So one of the things that was a big challenge for us is that the do-it-yourself, because we were empowering people, was becoming very common. So people didn't need to pay us anymore for the consulting, right? So we actually get into our own market. You get what I'm saying? But we didn't mind, because in business, there's always time to shift, Shift has to work all the time to stay relevant. So competition was also growing very fast because, this was becoming common knowledge and everybody could set it up, and, premium price was no longer viable. Then, smaller organizations were now beginning to demand technology. Unfortunately, most of them didn't have proper, support divisions or, service desks to handle their internal needs, or departments to handle their internal needs. And I personally found that cloud computing was the natural answer to this challenge. And so I made a decision to transition the company to build a platform that we would begin to serve customers differently, and we wouldn't need to have regular support visits to any organization. And to learn this, I partnered with Qualtrics. I don't know if you use Qualtrics in this university. It's a very popular research software. It's a cloud application. It's an American tool. it's used heavily by the universities. So I partnered with Qualtrics, which is a very successful cloud company in the US, to just appreciate how this works. So I started to sell Qualtrics on behalf of Qualtrics, the company. The product is Qualtrics, the company is Qualtrics. And it was a very interesting relationship because the support queries go, updates are provided to the customers, all the benefits that come with cloud. And so this gave me a chance to think about digitizing. I always wanted to digitize the small enterprises. So this allowed me to think about digitizing our small enterprises. When you speak about small enterprises, we're speaking about, small kiosks, small shops. It's a very typical setup. So our company right now has built Open Business, which is a platform that we use to help digitize small and medium-sized enterprises on SaaS. We started this project in 2011, and we're still working on it. I believe that with the fourth industrial revolution, there's going to be like a huge disruption in the way everything runs, and I'm really afraid that our small businesses, which were here, the universities were when I left, no use of technology, just using phones for their personal use or social media, will not have a platform on which their businesses can also be online and be part of the global commerce industry. So that's what I've been working on. This is a big challenge that we want to tackle. And as we were dealing with this interesting area, a lot of things have come to our attention because small businesses require a lot of support. It's almost like a social enterprise, actually, because there's a bit more. It's not just the business part. You have to really think about how to transform that business, how to transform the revenues of that business, how to make a change in the community, because small businesses sustain the local communities. So we believe that we need a lot of we need a lot of effort for Africa to benefit from the fourth industrial revolution. I think the most important thing is to make sure that as many people are able to code and as many people can be able to suggest how we can use technology to solve the day-to-day problems. I actually think that the technology that will be relevant for Spain may not be relevant for Kenya, so we must develop those technologies and utilize them based on our setting. And because we can transfer the kinds of technologies that people are creating necessarily directly how they are. So this is a huge challenge, and we won't just focus on the African retail sector for that purpose. So what is Open Business? Open Business is really a neat trade ecosystem that enables merchants to perform their transactions, serve their customers, make payments, analyze performance, and interact with business support services electronically. This is really what this platform is about. I'll tell you a little bit about the context and why we think it's a huge problem to solve. We have what we call the Africa's missing middle. Africa's missing middle is really a concept of when you come to Africa, you find very, very, very small enterprises and then very huge enterprises. So we just don't have this medium. So we are never generating enough jobs, all right? And we're never just doing things to scale. So this, I think, is a huge problem. I think there are many economists in this university, and this is a huge, huge problem because when we think about the sector's contribution vis-a-vis the Africa's SME sector's contribution to the growth versus other parts of the world, you see that we are giving 45% of the jobs and 33% contribution to GDP. And this could be average. In many countries, it's really a lot lower. And this is not sustainable because we are not just generating enough opportunities or enough organization that will scale and generate the wealth that our continent really desires. So we have to double the size of the SMEs that operate there. They have to just grow, have capacity to absorb more people in terms of job environment, and just that means that they must afford. So affording means that they have to sell more, and they have to keep growing, and they have to do, there's so many things, there's a lot of transition that needs to be there. The other problem that has been identified is lack of access to finance. This is a huge, huge, huge problem. And it's one of the things that really stalls most of these businesses. So in this huge challenge, which no one can tackle alone, we have picked a small component, and we really want to go in and see how technology can digitize, how we can digitize these enterprises, and after digitizing them, give them access to services through an ecosystem. This is what we are working on. That is, we want to think about how do we solve access to market problems. Today we know that if you're only depending on the customers that are walking on your street, then you're completely constrained. So how do we make sure that anybody who is accessing the internet that wants to buy from small businesses can be able to buy from small businesses? We also have lots of challenges with licenses and compliance. Like I said, government not being very digital. What can we do about that? We have access to, we have a problem with lack of access to finance, but that's mainly because most small businesses can't prove their income. You understand? They don't keep records properly, so it's very hard for anybody to service this kind of market. And so even the credit is expensive when it's available because the risks is a huge problem trying to assess, and you have to cover yourself very well. So then the other problem is that most of these enterprises are just reselling other people's products. Most of the products are imports. And so, although we can't quite deal with this problem of manufacturing and value addition, we believe that after that is done, there has to be distribution through the retail sector. So, and I have to mention that, in our context, 80% of retail is in small businesses, maybe, and then 20% is in the bigger, kind of established retail outlets like chains and stuff like that. So maybe even now it's 85. So because most people just buy from small shops. So now the other compounding issues that really impact these institutions, and that's things like this. There's very little trade between African countries, If I speak about the European Union, for example, there's a very huge amount of trade between the European countries. So we have many trading blocks, economic blocks in Africa. Many of them, some of the countries are even in two, but there's still a lot of trade barriers. So in terms of how the countries interact, because it's based on like really old systems that occurred maybe just during the times of independence, heavily dependent on Anglophone, Francophone kind of history. And so Africa is actually trading more with other continents than it's trading with itself. And this is very unsustainable, very, very unsustainable. And that, I'm just saying that 80% of the trade is the small enterprises. So they're doing all the imports, and then they have all these challenges. So we believe that technology is what is going to break these boundaries. This is what we believe, and this technology should be delivered in an ecosystem. So we've begun tackling this problem from our country, Kenya, which right now still has the best internet penetration and even rated as having the best internet speeds. And we believe it's a very innovative country that's ready to use technology to make a difference. You may have heard about M-Pesa, for example. Anybody who's heard about a payment solution in Kenya called M-Pesa? A mobile money payments, which Kenyans don't use cards. They use something else on their phones. They pay using their phones. They don't use cards. So this is something that we've done and has very high adoption. So this is some of the things that we really want to learn from and do that. So this limited inter-African trade is really something that needs to be tackled, and we hope that we can help in tackling this through our ecosystem. The other thing that we have in Africa is resource drain, because African countries are exporting almost all their resources as raw materials or unprocessed goods. This is a huge problem, and I'll just give you a very classic example. Now, this is just some information from Grow Ventures, which was released in 2013. Look at this. In 2011, Africa exported $2.27 billion worth of coffee. And at the same time, Germany, which doesn't produce coffee, re-exported coffee worth $3.67 billion, and 50% of that was green coffee. Green coffee, my father is a coffee farmer, and I grew up in a coffee farm. So green coffee is just something that they just process right from the factory, the same stuff that the farmers are exporting. So this just tells you how much value is being lost in terms of, money that can come in. And this is happening mainly because we do not have certain things. We do not have these SMEs who are going to come and come in between the farmers and the global markets, the end user, consumer. So there are very, very, very few countries that are doing this. This is an example of a country, Cote d'Ivoire, that is producing coffee. They get much better value on that. But this is really a problem that must be tackled, and we believe that this problem can only be tackled by the small businesses. But then again, even if they process this coffee, they have to market this coffee. I mean, a consumer in Spain needs to know about good quality coffee if they want good quality coffee from Kenya. And so I think today everybody's going to depend on the internet to do that. So we believe that a technological ecosystem is really part of the chain that is going to deliver a solution to the African continent with this. And that's part of what we are working on. This is another problem that is huge in Africa. You can see illicit financial flows. This is another example of the challenges that the African trade sector faces. These are huge problems. We just want to be part of the problem, and it's a part of the solution to solving this problem. What I want you to pay attention to is that you see that in Africa, everybody's saying that the biggest challenge in Africa, but corruption is only 5%, but commercial transactions are accounting for the 65%. And these are mainly driven by multinationals because of the unfair trade process. But it's not just unfair, they're just solving a problem, they're doing business, right? So we just need to do business differently. And I think the only way we can do business differently is to make sure that there are players from the continent that are effectively serving the global market with the products that we produce effectively, and the distribution is working, and people can access and know that they sell this product. So these are huge problems that are affecting the African continent and the development of the African continent, and I believe the solution still lies within this missing middle. And we just have to keep on just making this missing middle stop being what it is today. So the other thing is an enabling environment. So this is just wanted to highlight some of the things. So we are working with the government of Kenya, for example, because we want to make sure that market access is not limited by government processes, government facilitation processes. And that's because we want the government of Kenya to provide all trade facilitation services end-to-end digitally to small businesses. So this is another thing that we are trying to solve, from getting certification for processes and making payments to government institutions for small businesses. So if you're on your phone or on your tablet, you should be able to service a customer that demanded your product anywhere and not be limited by a procedure that is attached to a government agency. So this is huge. It's not something that people do every time, but we are happy to challenge the government, and I think the government is happy to respond. So those are some of the things. Anything that they can think about, we are working on a public-private partnership with the government ministry to ensure that we really promote this. So this is a huge problem that we want to solve, and we believe that we will make a contribution towards the Kenyan ecosystem, and as well as the regional ecosystem over time. So my vision for the SME sector really is, which we've already done, is we want the small businesses to leapfrog. So most of them are in this style. They're just running traditional enterprises, selling in an old-fashioned brick and mortar. Nobody knows about them, probably just the people who work on that street or customers' voice bought from them. But the beauty of technology and the fourth industrial revolution is that we can leapfrog these enterprises. So we've already created a significant part of this. They don't need anything. We just give them one tool. They get an online shop. They can service customers on the storefront and do everything they can with just simple Android devices and get payments through M-Pesa, for example. Because that's the technology they have, and that's what's relevant to them. we want to make sure that after this, all these enterprises can be discovered easily. So for this, we are using our serverless computing. We are heavily on cloud, and now we're depending on serverless computing, especially from AWS, Amazon. The other thing that we are working on is access to markets. We want to make sure that these merchants can benefit from the customers who are using the internet. Today, most of the people selling on the internet, there are very few online shops that you can find, even in Kenya. And so we know that's because these enterprises don't have capacity to even do these online shops, and there's just not enough technology for them to even utilize some of the globally available platforms that they could actually go and activate those. Plus, there's also lots of other local perspectives to doing trade. So we are working on a project collaboratively with government to ensure that we avail the trade facilitation services end-to-end, and also for us, we'll provide the platform to allow all of those that use our product through the omni-channel approach to ensure that they also have a way to serve customers online, but most importantly, to ensure that they can, for example, in East Africa, we have over 74 million internet users, and we want these people to be able to know how to find the kind of inventory that exists within small businesses. The other thing is that we know there's over 388 million internet users in Africa, and we want to encourage intra-African trade by just making sure that it's possible. We start this Kenya, but we believe that it's something that we'll be able to scale to the continent. Some of the tech that we are using, that we still ride on the serverless infrastructure, but we're going to have lots of machine learning, because we want to be able to tell this. We have a lot of data to analyze about the sector now. So we want to do that, and we want to use that data to help customers, that is the merchants, know about what to trade in, things to do, and anything that we can do to really promote trade, and also implement a trade hub that would really make life a little bit more easy for these enterprises. And then we also have the fintech. We aim to really help to financial inclusion for these small businesses, so that the data that their business has can become useful when they ask for credit. So we're also exploring this to ensure that there can be a credit score that emanates from our platform, and alternative lenders or traditional lenders willing to do this can be there. And this will also utilize a bit of blockchain on it. So these are the projects that we're already working on. And at this point, I don't know if I still have extra time, but I'll take questions in the rest of the time. So just to summarize, how can our communities thrive? Really is the question that we want to answer. How can we help our communities thrive? How can I impact the small enterprise in Kenya so that our communities can thrive? Because they're the ones that sustain the local communities. If you go to the shopping centers, the jobs are coming from there, the supplies are coming from the small enterprises. And for us, the answer is very simple. Just give people a chance to rediscover themselves and grow. That's all. Even from my mentorship work, the minute people rediscover themselves, then they thrive. And it's very sustainable. So anything that we can do to ensure that the people and the businesses that we impact, or the institutions that we work with, rediscover their ability to make a difference for themselves or for the people around them or the communities that they serve, is what I believe makes a very big difference. And so I do my work with the first perspective of, how do I make a change here? How do I make an impact? How do I positively transform what I'm seeing as a problem into a solution? So thank you very much. I think I'll be happy to take questions.
Okay. Thank you very much for your presentation, and I guess there may be some questions from the audience. No? Yeah. Sorry, Jerome. Can we have a microphone? Okay. Wait for a while, it's coming.
Thank you very much for the great talk and for sharing the experience. It's one curiosity. So through your professional activity and development of open business system, so are you seeing that these activities directly empowering the involvement of women in business creation and
Yes, okay, yeah. Thank you very much. So you're asking if open business will impact the development of women? Mm-hmm. Yes, very much. This is because I believe that a lot of women would like to have more time. And if we promote online business, which is 24 hours, a lot of women can even run businesses from their own homes and be with their children. And I think this is significant. I already know many people who do that, who are selling through social media or something else. And for that, they're able to get sales and deliver and service those sales. So I think internet e-commerce and m-commerce will be a huge boost to these kinds of enterprises. And I must say that 62% of very small and unlicensed, sometimes, most of the time, enterprises are women-owned. So they stand to benefit a lot, and so they're the biggest stakeholder in the African retail sector.
And another question, can you also see whether this open business would let's say, free people from the influence of specific circles of influence, so give more access then to specific classes of people than to do business. So without being bonded to some champions or decision makers that would hinder the access otherwise. I don't know.
Yes, I don't know if I got your question right.
You know, sometimes you want to develop a business, but to develop this business, then you need to talk to a specific class of persons, and because of your social condition or because of your gender, you don't have direct access to these persons. So you need to go through other persons, and then of course, it starts to be tedious, and many things can happen on the way. So, does the open business environment allows shortcuts and then more direct access to, to services and to decision making?
Okay. Yeah, so that's why we said it's an ecosystem, because we hope that we can bring in as many third-party providers as possible to be able to service this business owners. Whether it's government, whether it's professional services, and if you can be able to activate or get access to services without really having to put your face together with the other party, then that's very useful. So we really hope to bring a solution to end-to-end servicing of business requests, whether it's government to business or government to the professionals or government to, business to customer. This is really the kind of ecosystem that we want to eventually have, allowing that to be an advantage to the people that maybe you're just thinking about the challenges that come with having to look for another party who makes something happen in between. Yeah, and I think technology today can allow for end-to-end services if the third parties involved were cooperative enough, and our aim is to just encourage this, because everybody's interested in really solving these problems.
Thank you. So you mentioned you grew up in a farm. Yes. What made you decide to go for a career in computer science?
That's interesting. So my parents were teachers, so we were just let free to go and go through the school system and become what you wanted to be without any restriction. And I don't remember anything that put the girl against the boy or anything else. Or just there, excel, make sure that you go to the university and be whatever you want to be. So so it was just a choice because there was never any restriction. Yes, yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah.
So thank you for your talk. I think we are not used to this African perspective, and I think this was very interesting to me. And so this is a general question. So you gave this perspective on gender issues from this African perspective. So maybe you can tell us how you see the situation here, like in Europe or something. So what is your sort of a bit of outsider point of view of what is the status of women in computer science in Europe, for instance?
Okay, so thank you very much. I'm not very sure. You know, Europe is very diverse, all these many different countries. But having said that, because of my involvement with the Netterborg Institute and the little information that I have out of that, I think that the shortage of women in tech, you know, or in STEM is a global challenge. Even here, I would imagine that if I come and just try to assess, I would find that this is still the situation, because it's been a global challenge for so many countries. So I wouldn't kind of specifically provide any statistics, but I still think that even in forums where I have gone, I haven't quite found enough women to say that, you know, this is a country that has done very well in it. But I would be very happy to see some of the things, some of the statistics, or, you know, learn how that is being addressed by various organizations or individuals that feel that we need to do something about that.
Okay. Well, thank you for your talk. I was interested in knowing a little bit more about your work at the policy level. I don't know if you are involved in some fora. For instance, I was very lucky to be able to attend the Internet Governance Forum in Kenya, actually, like 7 years ago or 6 years ago. And I was very impressed about I mean, you were discussing things in Kenya that we were not discussing, for instance, in Uruguay, from where I come from. And the level of, in particular in relation to the mobile ecosystem and all the challenges and possibilities. And so I think that you are in AFCHICS, I guess, you have a very special position, because you have this gender perspective, but also this African perspective. And I think that you could contribute a lot to the global discussion and to the shaping of the technology, I mean, internet technology in general, from both perspectives, let's say, which I think is something that we are lacking.
Okay, thank you very much. So I've been involved in a few engagements. I think I remember there's something called this Kenya, we call it KICTONET, the Kenya ICT Action Forum, which is this another, you know, kind of was also another online community of Kenyans that just wanted to have the policy environment changing and allowing multi-stakeholder participation of getting the government to respond positively to all these technological changes and disruptions that are happening around the world, and we still continue to do that. So I am involved sometimes in the activities that I'm able to do that from the ICT industry, but from the retail sector, which is where I'm spending most of my time now, and how the technology can make a difference there. We are also working with ministry in partnership, and we are always happy to participate in various ways that can just help the government shift. One of the things that we really aim to do, which is really an area of research, is that some of this information that we will learn, the data that we will learn about our retail sector, we would like it to impact decisions, even at policy level, which is why we want to work in collaboration with the Ministry of Trade and Industry in Kenya. We feel that that's a better way, because one of the things that we lack in Africa is data to help people make factual decisions. There's just not enough. So we hope that our company would be part of that pair that really helps that become possible. And we've seen interest already from the ministry for that. But having said that, even the ICT sector, like we like to call it in Kenya, we have to really help in them maybe making better policy decisions, especially around e-commerce, and really getting other government agencies to respond better by being ready to provide especially web services for us to access government services.
It's time for lunch, no? Thank you again, Dorcas, for the presentation, and let's keep talking during lunch.
Thank you.